This is Reset. I'm Patrick Smith in for Sasha-Ann Simons. The Chicago White Sox are the talk of the town, but not for a good reason.
The 2024 White Sox are the worst team in MLB history. Maybe.
White Sox are on pace to lose 123 games this season.
Is this really happening? Are we following the worst team essentially in the history of Major League Baseball?
And the 2024 White Sox have carved out a place in baseball infamy. Their record-breaking losses, abysmal run differential, and anemic offense put them in contention for the worst team in modern MLB history.
As of today, the White Sox have won 36 games and lost a whopping 115. The modern-day record for most losses in a season is 120. So where did the White Sox go wrong? Here to discuss is Cheryl Raye-Stout, WBEZ sports contributor. Hey, Cheryl.
Hey, how you doing, Patrick?
Doing well. Richard Lindberg, historian, expert on the Chicago White Sox, and co-author of the book Total White Sox, the Definitive Encyclopedia of the World Champion Franchise. Richard, thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
And on the line is Susan Padove, a longtime White Sox fan.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Okay, before we get into it, people can talk their smack about the White Sox, but we have to acknowledge that as of yesterday, they're on a 3-game winning streak.
It's also been important for him turning things around. This one, another one, high in the air, deep to right, it is gone!
Susan, were you relieved to get a few W's?
Oh, you can tell me that for sure. I've been to about 20, 25 games this year, and I think we saw 3 wins prior to this weekend. But we were there Saturday and Sunday and saw the first 2 of this 3-game winning streak, which I attribute to finally finding power in their bats.
Okay, yeah, that offense needed to wake up, although, not quite in time, I would say. Richard, we got 11 games left this season. Are they going to win enough to avoid breaking the modern record?
I don't expect that they're going to fend off this record. I think it's very inevitable because they're playing some playoff teams that are in contention. And sadly and regrettably, I think that 1962 Mets record is going to be shattered.
I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm a Tigers fan. I thought about doing a little gloating. I'm not going to do that, mostly because Susan's on the line, and I have to respect, and Richard, longtime fans.
But you don't respect me.
Okay, I respect you as well, Cheryl. I was actually, in 2003, I was at the Tigers game when they won to avoid getting to 120 games lost and beat, tying the Mets record. Cheryl, tell us a little bit about that Mets 1962 New York Mets season. I mean, how do the White Sox compare to that team?
Well, they kind of made the Mets team kind of like became a cartoon, lovable team that lost. This White Sox team is not lovable. They're likable people, and their mistakes are glaring at the time, but people don't notice it that much until after, when you see the score, when you see a blown save, when you see them leaving men on base, or when you see a ball drop between 3 defenders. That's the type of stuff that is similar to the Mets. But we're seeing this, and with social media, it gets it's glaring more than anything else I've ever seen. Yeah,
I mean, the play, it was a week or so ago when the ball dropped in between 3 fielders, 2 of them kind of a dangerous collision. I think the Orioles broadcaster called it like the most White Sox thing to happen or something like that. Susan, how are you feeling about this team? I mean, are they lovable? Are they likable, despite the losses, or is this just a year from hell?
You have to be a baseball purist to like this team. There are occasional glimpses of good play. As I said, the recent surge in power, Benny's bat and Vaughn starting to hit home runs with some frequency is helping salve the wounds. The bullpen has been a little bit better, but I'm buoyed by the fact that we have good starting pitching. Yeah. I think it's gonna, you just have to look beyond the box scores. The bullpen had been pretty bad all year. We don't have the ability to catch up when we're behind late in a game. And the many games we've gone to, if we're behind and it's 6th or 7th inning, we're hitting the road for home because we know they're not going to come back. So that's the downside. But I was quite pleased to see their bats, reignite this weekend. And, the difference is, here we beat the A's, right? And I'm looking at their lineup, and their 2, 3, 4, 5 hitters, they have each of them like 20, 30 home runs. That is like, I think the top, home run hitter on the Sox is what, 17?
19 right now.
19. Well, thank you, Cheryl. but the point being, we thought we'd have Eloy and Moncada and Robert, hitting home runs to support those other guys, and it just hadn't. Obviously 2 of the 3 are gone, and Robert, he was injured, and then he didn't have bats protecting him. So, I mean, I think that's in essence, the problem. I think we'll get a bullpen next year, and hopefully, some of these young bats will come around, like Ramos and Sosa, and provide us with more offense than we've had most of the year.
You could tell a true baseball fan. You're finding silver linings even in this season. Richard, what about you? I mean, are you finding reasons for hope? Maybe not hope, because we know this season's lost, but things to like about this team?
Well, apart from 4 very potentially talented starting pitchers, there really isn't much there to give optimism. I blame much of this fiasco on the previous general manager, Rick Hahn, and also Kenny Williams, and now Chris Getz. I don't think the White Sox have received fair value for what they had. Player development has been nearly absent for the past 15 years. Trades inevitably go against the White Sox. Some of the very worst trades in team history were executed by Rick Hahn during his 11-year administration. The entire baseball operation needs a thorough examination from the scout level down to the development people to the coaches. It's an organization that is in complete and total disarray at a point in time when I think the very existence of the franchise is endangered. Cheryl and I were discussing this earlier. The crucial, critical thing to the sustainability of the White Sox in Chicago will be the potential to have this new stadium built at the 78. This is where the White Sox should have been in 1990, 1991. 35th and Shields is really no longer a desirable venue for a stadium. I think the White Sox are at a very dangerous point in their existence since the Black Sox scandal.
So, well, let's stay there for a second. I mean, if you're trying to get a new stadium built, this is not exactly, you're not exactly putting a product out there that people are going to want to support. I mean, is there any connection between just how pitiful the White Sox are this year and the chances they get of sort of getting this new stadium, getting public support for this new stadium?
Well, it's certainly not going to help the campaign. I think a lot of it is tied to what the Chicago Bears happen to do. Some people suggest that if the Bears and the White Sox can form an alliance and so-called bundle their interests together, both stadiums conceivably could be built. If the Bears end up moving to Arlington Heights, that may in fact help the White Sox, because I don't think the city of Chicago would want to lose one of its valued franchises, and then therefore perhaps the money can be located. But as it stands right now, getting this ideal location, and I believe that if it were to happen, the White Sox would be permanently anchored to Chicago, would become a big draw in the South Loop. It would benefit retail, it would benefit real estate development, and it's all going to hinge on this issue.
So let me go back to the first part of your answer earlier about general managers. This trade deadline, the White Sox, despite their poor record, had some of the most valued guys. It was sort of like everybody was waiting to see what the White Sox were going to do with their trades before other trades happened. My read, I'm no expert like Cheryl or Richard, my read was that they did not get back as much as people hoped they would. What did you make of their trade deadline deals this year?
Well, Drew Thorpe is likely going to be a very valuable piece, but again, that's questionable. The young players that we have seen come up this year, few, if any, have shown any sustainable success in the major leagues. Jonathan Cannon looks very promising, but we have this acquisition from the Los Angeles Dodgers,
Miguel Vargas.
Yeah, Miguel Vargas, and he's hitting about 170 and under 100 for the White Sox. Perhaps it's Chris Getz's inexperience as a general manager, but when you trade with the big boys like Houston, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, and so on, you're not going to flim-flam those kinds of teams, and are not going to give you their top-grade prospects. So the jury is out on some of these younger players until perhaps a year from now when we can better evaluate.
What I think is going to happen, and I had a scout call me up on Monday asking me about Luis Robert and Garrett Crochet. Teams, and I got a phone call. I've talked to other scouts at the ballpark. Those two players will likely be traded during this offseason. I do not want to see Garrett Crochet be gone because a lot of reasons, but this guy is an anchor. He's a leader. He's got unbelievable talent. But if they could turn them around for the bats that they need, and they need bats, that's what they have to do. And that's more than likely going to happen. It may even take as long as they did with Dylan Cease up until, almost spring training. But they want to get what they can get for those two players. However, with that said, with those two guys gone, you could count on 100-plus losses again next year.
Wow.
It's this team that has to do an awful lot of work to get themselves in shape. Now, they did get a good top pick in the draft in Hagen Smith out of Arkansas. He's similar to Garrett Crochet, similar to Chris Sale, those type of, but they need bats. And in their minor league system, in their AA, that's where they have their pitching. Again, they need the bats. You can have all this pitching, but if you don't have the position players, it doesn't work.
Susan, how do you feel hearing Cheryl predict another 100-loss season next year? I mean, do you agree? Are you going to sign up for season tickets again next year?
It's funny you say that because I've been a season ticket holder for 22 years, and first time in a long time I'm waffling on it. I'm inclined to give them another run, but I think Richard hit on a point. The Vargas trade, that was disappointing. I think they could have gotten more for Kopech. When they jettisoned, I guess he's not doing that well now, but at least he provided some power. Berger, when they let him go, it's just, I get it. There has to be turnover to get some good acquisitions, but thus far they haven't evidenced that they're going to get those acquisitions of good bats that they need. And I agree with Cheryl. Crochet could be an anchor of this rotation for a long time. I was at an event, Frank Thomas, said the same thing. He is obviously much more in tune with the quality of the staff and the player personnel than I, but he said the same thing. I mean, it would be great to hang on to him. I'd rather them jettison Robert and try to get, a few young bats, or maybe one of the young pitchers. But, a guy with Crochet's talent doesn't come around all the time. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just, I'm sure we'll be back in our seats, but it's a depressing thing. We just have to be resigned to the fact it's a work in progress.
I would like to add something that I see as a reporter in the locker room that the fans don't get to
Yeah.
see. This is not a glum locker room that you would expect it to be. Not that they're, joyful or anything like that, but they know that they're in a bad situation, and they're trying to do the best they can. And Grady Sizemore, who was an interim manager who never managed before, when I saw that those players got themselves T-shirts with Grady Sizemore on it, it was like, that's, he made it more of a high school-ish type thing, and that's what they needed. They needed to have the pressure off of them, and so they're playing with abandonment. It may not be the greatest thing for fans to hear, but at least it's not like it was last year, dealing with the guys that were there last year, which was a very difficult locker room to go into. But this year, I see the pitchers around Garrett Crochet. I see them talking to him. I see them talking to their catcher, Corey Lee. You didn't see that last year.
We've only got about a minute left, maybe a little less. Susan, I want to end with you. Who do you blame for this? It was only a couple of years ago that we thought the White Sox were going to be the power of the Central for years to come. That's not what's going on now. Who do you blame? I know you don't think everyone should get fired, but what should happen? Who do you blame for this?
I think they're making strides to fix it. I think Richard said something about the scouting and whatever. Well, they have jettisoned a good number of the foreign, the Latin scouts, Marco Patti and the like. But, I agree. I think it was the Hahn Williams administration. They drafted some guys. They gave them long-term contracts early in their careers. They didn't pan out, and there were a lot of injuries too. Let's not completely put the blame on them. Eloy and the other Moncada, thank you, who just came back for unknown reasons. I know why he came back, but in any event, those bats not being in the lineup certainly made the product even worse than it would have been. But I think you have to have young, hungry players, and I agree with Cheryl. I like the collegiality that I'm seeing on the field. So hopefully better days ahead. I think we got to give Getz a chance, and hopefully they'll get a good hire as a manager. But they seem to like Sizemore.
I'm sorry, guy. I would love for us to keep talking, but unfortunately, that is the end of our show. I'm glad we're ending with a little bit of positivity, even though Cheryl predicts another 100 losses next year. We've been talking to WBEZ sports contributor Cheryl Raye-Stout, White Sox expert and historian Richard Lindberg, and longtime White Sox fan Susan Padove. Thank you, everyone.
You're listening.
That's it for Reset. Have you subscribed to our twice-weekly newsletter? It's out on Mondays and Fridays. You can sign up at wbez.org/reset news. And don't forget, we've got a great daily podcast, too. So if you miss any part of the show, you can take Reset with you on the go. Just look for us wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Patrick Smith. Sasha-Ann Simons is back in the host chair tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.